Dani Dayan, Chairman of Yad Vashem. You'll be here in this position for a little over a year. What is it like?
Year and a half since August 2021. And, it's first of all, it's a privilege to chair, to lead the organization that is the central organization that is dedicated to Holocaust remembrance, to remember and to honor and to educate about the 6 million Jews that were murdered in the Shoah, in the Holocaust, is the privilege of my life. And it's also very challenging. We are in a watershed moment in Holocaust remembrance. Unfortunately, but also inevitably, we are approaching the post-survivor era, the era in which no witnesses, direct witnesses to the horrors of the Shoah will be amongst us. And we have to prepare ourselves, but also prepare the world for that moment, in which I fear will be the happy hour of the denialists and the distortionists. Therefore, our task will be much more difficult, much more challenging, but much more important, much more vital.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What does Yad Vashem represent for the Jewish people?
Well, we represent the victims. First of all, we represent the victims of the Shoah. There are many Holocaust organizations in the world. Yad Vashem is the central one. But the other difference is not only a difference in size. Is a difference that Yad Vashem, we care about the victims, the Jewish victims of the Shoah. I will tell you a story. I was in New York not long ago, and I was approached by a person, not Jewish, an Italian-American, that wanted to see me. He came to my hotel with 2 items that he wanted to donate to Yad Vashem. He told me a very moving story. He said, my dad was a GI, was a soldier in the US Army that liberated the camps in Germany, the concentration camps. And now he passed away. I was searching his attic and I found those 2 items. One was a set of photographs, black and white, very small photographs, but extremely graphic, about bodies in the camps that he liberated. And the second was a dagger, a very shining, I would say beautiful dagger that his father took from an SS officer. And I told him, I want only the photographs. We are not collectors of Nazi memorabilia. If they don't have a direct link to an historical event, we care about the victims, not about the perpetrators. So I took the photographs, and he was a little bit puzzled that I didn't take the beautiful dagger.
Yeah, interesting. What does the Holocaust represent to the Jewish people?
Well, our largest catastrophe during 2,000 years of exile, but also a culmination of a process. The Jewish people during 2,000 years in exile endured innumerable persecutions and discriminations and efforts to convert us and to eliminate us, and finally the Holocaust. We are approaching not only Yom HaShoah, Holocaust Remembrance Day, but also Yom HaAtzmaut, Israel's Independence Day. And when you understand that only 3 years after the end of the Shoah, the lowest point the Jewish people reached in its exile, we started our redemption process, and we regained our independence after 2,000 years of terrible events. Well, if that's not a miracle, I don't know what a miracle is.
Yeah. You said earlier that the Holocaust was the DNA of the Jewish people. What did you mean by that?
Well, it's part of the DNA of the Jewish people. There is no Judaism without remembrance. Judaism is based on remembrance. Pesach, Passover, what is it? We remember the event of our liberation from slavery in Egypt 4,000 years ago. Hanukkah, what is it? We remember our liberation from the Greeks more than 2,000 years ago. Tisha B'Av, the day of mourning, the annual day of fast and mourning, is remembering the destruction of Jerusalem, of the Holy Temple. So really, there is no Judaism without remembering our history. And the Shoah is a cataclysmic event in Jewish history that happened only 80 years ago. You know, I spoke a minute ago about Yom HaShoah, Holocaust Remembrance Day, Yom Ha'atzmaut, Israel's Independence Day, but I want to be more clear about that. Israel was not established because of the Holocaust. Israel was established in spite of the Holocaust. Israel would have been a much robust, greater, secure, successful country if there were additional 6 million Jews and their descendants in the world. But Israel is the guarantee that there will be not other Shoah for the Jewish people, hopefully for no people. And it is impossible to understand Israelis without understanding the impact that the Holocaust has on us. So in those two respects, those two dates are linked. Not in the sense that one is the reason for the other, but one inspires or affects deeply the other.
Yeah. We're coming up on the 75th anniversary of the independence and the establishment of the Jewish state. What are your thoughts looking back 75 years?
I think there are, first of all, joy. First of all, joy. Joy that we have the privilege to live in a Jewish generation that enjoys the not obvious fact that we have an independent sovereign state in our ancestral homeland. I think there are three ways to look at it to understand the joy. One is to look at the picture, a photograph. Take a photograph of Israel 2023 and analyze it. There is light, a lot of light, but also some shadows. But we can rejoice that we have that. The second is to take two photographs, Israel 1948, Israel 2023, and compare it. That is incredible. It's mind-boggling. The difference, the leap that we made from 48 to 2023 is simply a miracle. And the third way, which is the way I prefer to do that, is not to take one photograph or two photographs, but to take a film that starts with the destruction of Jerusalem in the year 70 and finishes today. In the midst, you have, as I said, the persecutions, the discrimination, the massacre, the Shoah, also important achievements. When you understand the path that we went through, then you are really overflown with joy.
So you see this as a miracle?
I see this as a miracle. I see this as a fulfillment of the unimaginable. Look, what is Zionism for me? Zionism for me is the fact that a people that was evicted from its land by an imperialist power in the year 70, and there was the most underprivileged people in the world, returns to its homeland and builds it again. That's the fact. You know, people ask me why did I come from my native Argentina here? Because I wanted to be a protagonist in the most amazing adventure of the Jewish people, and not just to sit in the theater and see the film.
Yeah. Well, you're part of the film. Do you also see this as part of the fulfillment of what the Hebrew prophets said thousands of years ago?
Well, I think that's a fact. If you read the prophecies and see what happened, it's a fact. I mean, the dry bones of Ezekiel are fulfilled here every single day.
Yeah.
Before our own eyes.
Yeah. And also, I know you've had a Christian desk here to reach out to the Christian world. How important is Christian support for Yad Vashem?
It is important because, you know, the Holocaust is an event that is a Jewish event, but it's a human event. And it happened in Europe, a predominantly Christian continent. And we have to reach out to the Christian world that in many sectors of it changed completely its attitude towards the Jewish people and shows great friendship towards the Jewish people. And we have to think together how those things do not happen again. And we see Christians as our allies on that endeavor.
I know it's a tragic episode in Christian history, but hopefully these days there's something to redeem that tragedy.
You know, if we have a common cause here, we have a common mission here, and we should fulfill it together.
You said that earlier that every day you touch history here.
Yeah, you know, you are exposed every single day to a new history, to a new story, to a new chronicle of an event. Unfortunately, many of them with no happy end, but others stories of salvation and stories of redemption. And, you know, for a person, I always was a person that, for whom Jewish history was not something that belongs to the books. It's something that you live. Jewish continuity for me is probably the most important mission in my life. And being responsible for an event like this, to remember an event like this, and being in touch with survivors and with research on the events is really incredible. You know, my first day in office, I was taken to a tour of the campus of Yad Vashem. And we have a museum of art in Yad Vashem, which by itself is quite mind-boggling, that when the Nazis tried to deprive the Jews from any resemblance of being human beings, there were Jews that continued to engage in the probably one of the most sublime manifestations of being a human being, art. And there was a quote in one wall of the museum that caught my eye. It's a quote by a Jewish Polish painter, a young Jewish Polish painter by the name of Gaza Strip. And she continued to paint and draw in the ghetto, in the Warsaw ghetto. And she hid her paints in an archive, in an underground archive that was recovered after the war, together with her last will and testament. The original was written, handwritten in Yiddish. In the wall there, it's in English and Hebrew. And she says, and I'm quoting freely, I know I am doomed. I will not survive. She wrote that in August 42 in the Warsaw ghetto. Indeed, she didn't survive. She was taken with her family, including her 3-year-old daughter, Margalit, to Treblinka and murdered there. But she says, she writes, I want to bequeath my art to the museum that the Jewish people will establish after the war. And when I saw that, I almost fainted, because she was referring to Yad Vashem. She didn't know it would be called Yad Vashem. She didn't know, probably she didn't imagine it will be in Jerusalem and an independent Jewish state, but she meant Yad Vashem. And you know, that moment I understood the responsibility on my shoulders. I am responsible to fulfill her last will, together with other 6 million written or not written, implicit or explicit last wills and testaments of 6 million victims. So you know what was my first decision as chairman of Yad Vashem? My first decision was to put that quote on a wall in my office. And this is the thing I see every morning when I come, and every evening when I turn off the lights, and that gives me the strength, the energy to do what I do.
What a profound story. Yeah. And that's the responsibility that you carry. Mm-hmm. Yeah. What's the message to people around the world here as we commemorate the Holocaust?
You know, the Shoah, the Holocaust has many lessons. And I believe that the lesson learned by any decent person is legitimate. In Hebrew we say, Ele ve'ele divrei Elohim chaim. These and these are the words of a living God. But I am entitled to my lessons. And I have many. But I would like to share with you two. The first is the existential necessity of an independent Jewish state. In many sectors in the world, the very notion of a nation state is becoming unfashionable or not politically correct. We just learned the hard way we need a nation state, that we will never give it up. You know, according to Jewish tradition, all Jewish generations were in Mount Sinai when the Almighty gave Moses the Torah. In the same sense, I think we all were in the St. Louis. The St. Louis was a ship that departed from Germany full of Jewish refugees and sailed to the American continent. They had visas to Cuba, pre-Castro Cuba, of course. But nevertheless, they denied them entry. The United States denied them entry. Every single country denied them entry. The St. Louis sailed back to Europe. Most of its passengers died in the Holocaust. Israel is the guarantee that there will be no more St. Louises in this world, and if there is a St. Louis, God forbid, we will have a safe haven. And the second is regarding anti-Semitism. You know, I was naive enough to think that anti-Semitism belongs to the past. When I came to New York to serve as a senior Israeli diplomat, I thought it will be in a low place in my agenda. But during my 4-year term in New York, 15 Jews were murdered in the United States in anti-Semitic attacks in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Poway, California, Jersey City, New Jersey, Muncie, New York. Now, I'm not implying that we are in Germany of the 1930s. No, we are not. But the difference between our contemporary generation and the generation of the 1930s, Jews and non-Jews alike, is that we have the experience they didn't have. They probably thought, okay, they burn books, they burn synagogues, that's terrible, but they will not kill 6 million people. We know anti-Semitism, if it's not confronted immediately, vigorously, forcefully, and defeated, can develop into monstrous dimensions. So when we say never again, never is now. Never is now. Act now, when the first signs of anti-Semitism rise. And that includes also the regimes that call for the annihilation of the Jewish state. When in Tehran they say that they want to wipe Tel Aviv off the map, it's not because they don't like the buildings of Tel Aviv. They don't like the Jews of Tel Aviv. And therefore, also that is a very relevant message that, in my view, the Shoah gives to the world.
Yeah. On the eve of International Holocaust Remembrance Day, what's your final thoughts?
Well, my thoughts are, first of all, with the survivors, that unfortunately they are getting older and need their help, our assistance, with the victims that never had the privilege to get old. I never forget that staggering 1,500,000 children were killed in the Shoah, were killed in the Holocaust, Jewish children. And our mission, together with our friends, our allies, is to make sure that a catastrophe like that never happens again.
Yeah. Well, Dani Dayan, thanks for your insight and analysis, especially on this very important day.
Thank you so much.